Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session. In our previous sharing, we reviewed the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the future Buddha, his life in the palace as a prince, his four encounters that gave rise to self-reflection into the nature of existence, and how this led him to later decide to renounce the lay life and go forth into homelessness as a renunciant, seeking the answers to the problem of suffering. In today's session, we will focus on the nature of suffering, its negative impact on us, but also how it can help us move towards its cessation. After his awakening, the Buddha gave a discourse to the Bhikkhu Sangha, the congregation of monks, called The Noble Search. The Buddha gives an account of his own quest for enlightenment from the time of his life in the palace up to his sharing and dissemination of the Dhamma to his first 5 disciples. This sutta, discourse, helps us understand the nature of suffering, its danger, and escape from it. The Buddha begins by sharing with the monks the 2 types of search, the noble search and the ignoble search. And what is the ignoble search? Here, someone being himself subject to birth seeks what is also subject to birth. Being himself subject to aging, he seeks what is also subject to aging. Being himself subject to sickness, he seeks what is also subject to sickness. Being himself subject to death, he seeks what is also subject to death. Being himself subject to sorrow, he seeks what is also subject to sorrow. Being himself subject to defilement, he seeks what is also subject to defilement. In this passage, the Buddha focuses the attention or describes or defines the ignoble search in terms of the nature of suffering. In the first noble truth of suffering, the Buddha describes that birth is suffering, old age is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, pain, grief, despair are suffering. To be separated from the pleasant, to be united with the unpleasant are suffering, and not to get what one wants is also suffering. In short, the mind-body phenomenon, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. So this is very important because suffering itself is at the center of the teachings on the whole journey of the Buddha's path to liberation. And he goes on to describe in relation to the definition, or in this case, the elements of the ignoble search. And what may be said to be subject to birth, the Buddha says. Wife and children are subject to birth. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, gold and silver are subject to birth. These acquisitions are subject to birth, and one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to birth, seeks what is also subject to birth. And some of you may say, according to what the Buddha describes and defines to be subject to birth, I may be exempt from many of the categories defined here. Maybe some of you are single and don't have children, or you don't have any men or women slaves, or you don't have any animals in your house. or elephants, or cattle, horses, or mares. But of course, we understand that the Buddha refers to the way people used to live at that time. If we look closely, the objects, any object that we encounter in the world, is subject to birth, or in this case, subject to suffering. The Buddha continues to describe and defines not only what is subject to birth, but also what is subject to aging, subject to sickness, subject to death, subject to sorrow, subject to defilement. And he describes the same categories. And he defines in the same way as that which was subject to birth with the rest of the categories. And then he offers us the noble search, mentioning that being oneself subject to birth, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, one seeks the unborn supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Being himself subject to aging, having understood the danger in what is subject to aging, he seeks the unaging supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Being himself subject to sickness, having understood the danger in what is subject to sickness, he seeks the unailing supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Being himself subject to death, having understood the danger in what is subject to death, he seeks the deathless supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Being himself subject to sorrow, having understood the danger in what is subject to sorrow, he seeks the sorrowless supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Being himself subject to defilement, having understood the danger in what is subject to defilement, he seeks the undefiled supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. This is the noble search. So the noble search and the ignoble search are defined by the nature of suffering as the main object to observe. But what defines to follow one path or the other is one's own intention. In this case, the Buddha brings this as a reflection when he was in the palace, having come in contact with those encounters, the old man, the sick person, the corpse, and then the seeker wanting to come out from the cycle of birth and rebirth, samsara. So he once again addresses the monks, the bhikkhus, sharing that before his enlightenment, while he was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, bodhisattva is a being destined to attain enlightenment, in this case a future Buddha. I too, being myself subject to birth, sought what was also subject to birth. Being myself subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, I sought what was also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. Then I considered, why being myself subject to birth, do I seek what is also subject to birth? Why being myself subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, do I seek what is also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement? Suppose that being myself subject to birth, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, I seek the unborn supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. Suppose that being myself subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow and defilement, having understood the danger in what is subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow and defilement, I seek the unaging, unailing, deathless, sorrowless, and undefiled supreme security from bondage, Nibbana. This reflection into the nature of suffering from the moment of recognizing the problem, being subject to suffering. One cannot deny that, but in his sincerity, he is able to recognize that nature of suffering, perhaps not reflected before, not being seen clearly before. Now he comes to a point to accept this reality. From there, having the capacity to reflect and consider, particularly what he was doing, that even though that truth of suffering was present, he was perpetuating, following, and seeking more suffering, continuing to being driven by those objects subject to suffering. And from there, the insight, and particularly the intention arising from the realization of the nature of suffering. What if I now seek that which is not subject to suffering? This is a very important moment that we can all relate in our own lives, with our own struggles, with our own reality, with whatever condition we are in whatever environment we are at the present moment. That intention, so powerful, can help us, can lead us to seek, to find, and to practice that which is wholesome and beneficial to us. So the Buddha, at that time, Siddhartha, he makes that decision, and as we discussed last time, to go out, to abandon the palace. So he says that while still being young, black-haired young man endowed with the blessing of youth, in the prime of life, though my mother and father wished otherwise and wept with tearful faces, I shaved off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and went forth from the home life into homelessness. This decision to become a recluse and to seek the way out from suffering. So emphasizing in the intention, the setting of intention, how it defines the path, and that intention being very closely related or being born from the problem itself. So most of the time when we are facing suffering, we tend to turn our backs to it. We tend to ignore it. We tend to avoid it, or to put blame on others because we are suffering. But in this case, the Buddha invites us to pay close attention to that experience, to look closely, deeply within, to where it hurts, to where the problem lies, where it resides, where it lives, where it thrives, and be able just to give rise to this intention, to work with it, and eventually having this intention to eradicate it, to solve the problem. And we will see how this sincerity, honesty, his humbleness towards the problem, towards his own challenges and struggles, he is able to be so true to his intention, faithful, but also surrendering to this intention, being so honest that until he finds the answer, he will not betray himself, he will not go astray or deviating from the main purpose or the main goal of this intention. And in the search for enlightenment, Siddhartha goes and appoints himself to different teachers. And he shares with the monks that having gone forth in search of what is wholesome, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, I went to Alara Kalama and said to him, "Friend Kalama, I want to lead the holy life in this Dhamma and discipline." And Alara Kalama replied, "The Venerable One may stay here. This Dhamma is such that a wise man can soon enter upon and abide in it, realizing for himself, through direct knowledge, his own teacher's doctrine." And with his utmost dedication and determination, Siddhartha appoints himself to the first teacher, Alara Kalama. And after some time, he is able to master that doctrine, the practice, the teachings of Alara Kalama. And when this happens, Siddhartha goes to him and shares his realization. And Alara Kalama becomes very happy, very pleased, praising Siddhartha and sharing how auspicious it is to have such a venerable one that, appointing himself to the teaching, he is able to experience for himself the fruits of those teachings. And at that moment, Siddhartha is given one of the most supreme privileges. Being himself a pupil, the teacher places him, awarding him with the highest honor to be at the same level of Alara Kalama. And at that moment, Siddhartha realizes that this Dhamma does not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana, but only to reappearance in the base of nothingness. And not being satisfied with that Dhamma, disappointed with it, he left. The realization and the state of the practice, in this case described as the base of nothingness, is a meditative state when one goes deep into concentration. But Siddhartha realizes that that was not what he was looking for. That is a very elated and high state of meditation, concentration, and deep understanding. And it brings rebirth into that realm. But it does not lead to Nibbana, to the cessation of suffering. So at this moment, he could have stayed, he could have become a teacher or a successor to his teacher. But at that moment, he relied in his intention, in the primary intention that he set when he realizes the nature of suffering, and also by being sincere and honest to that intention, not to get distracted or enticed by different titles or different positions or different awards or renown. He remained humble and remained sincere with himself and his intention, and humbly declines the offer from his first teacher and just leaves, continuing his search until he finds another teacher, and Siddhartha, still in search of what is wholesome, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, he went to Udaka Ramaputta, another teacher, and says to him, "Friend, I want to lead the holy life in this Dhamma and discipline." Udaka Ramaputta replied, "The Venerable One may stay here. This Dhamma is such that a wise man can soon enter upon and abide in it, himself realizing through direct knowledge his own teacher's doctrine." So Siddhartha, in the same way as with Alara Kalama, he appoints himself to Udaka Ramaputta and continues his practice, devoting himself to the guidance, and very soon he is able to realize this teaching from Udaka Ramaputta, and he goes to him and shares and also checks with Udaka Ramaputta about his state, about his learning, and about his experience. And Udaka Ramaputta confirms and becomes very happy that Siddhartha was able to achieve the fruits of the path that he was teaching. And in this case, Udaka Ramaputta awards him with an even higher position to appoint Siddhartha as the teacher. But once again, upon reflection and upon investigation, Siddhartha realizes that the teaching is not leading towards disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana, but only to the state of neither perception nor non-perception, which was another meditative state even higher than the previous one that he attained. And then he considered declining the offer and just leaving once again. So we see that his intention and his sincerity and honesty, particularly focusing on the nature of suffering, that it was still there, present. He could not find the answer. He was not able to put out the fire of this suffering. He remained humble, and despite all the effort and all the positive outcomes that he encountered with the first two teachers, he once again goes back on the road to seek what he sought to find, to seek what he was looking for, the end of suffering. So he continues on his journey and now comes across a group of ascetics and tries the practices of asceticism. That is, believed that the body itself is preventing one to achieve or to attain enlightenment. The boundaries of the body and the limitations of the body prevent one to achieve such state. So ascetics punish the body, trying to fight against the nature of the body by not surrendering to the desires of the body or the needs of the body, that one can transcend those desires or those obstacles or those barriers, and by doing so, one can achieve enlightenment. So Siddhartha finds 5 ascetics, and he goes through a very strenuous process of practice that will take him about 6 years. And among the group, Siddhartha was the most extreme, the most disciplined, the most determined ascetic, that it was a common belief that if anyone were to achieve enlightenment among themselves, Siddhartha was the one, as he was very extreme, taking every practice to the limit, taking his body to the limit, not sleeping for days, not eating also for many days, nor drinking water, standing without sitting, eating 1 grain of rice per day, and he was at the verge of death. And after some time, he realizes that this was not the way, that he was going to die, that he was going to continue to be unawakened. So after long years of practice, determination, and drive, trying to punish the body to the extreme, he was so emaciated that he was at the verge of death. So the story says that a villager sees him just dying, almost like a corpse, still breathing. And she comes to him and she compassionately and kindly offers a bowl of rice, some food, and urges him to eat. Please take this, please eat. So at that moment, he receives the food. He's able to give in, particularly choosing life, because he was at the verge of death. And considering this, in a way, he is abandoning the practices of asceticism. And the other 5 friends, 5 ascetics, become disgusted and disappointed with him because he's taking food once again. And they believed that he had abandoned the practices of asceticism. So in a way, they turned their back to him. But in this case, Siddhartha chooses life and also considers the way to enlightenment that was not through the punishing of the body. So he continues on his own. Now there was no one to be followed. He needed to trust himself until eventually abiding in a place that was suitable for him to practice, supported by the village, he is able to achieve enlightenment, Nibbana. In this process, we are able to see the pattern. What was that drove Siddhartha to do what he did? And we see a constant, something that followed him or that stayed with him and that helped him to continue to follow that path. And that was suffering itself. Buddha teaches suffering and the cessation of suffering. So we see that through the encounters, deep wisdom arose in him, deep reflection, deep insight, even in the troubles, even in the despair, or being puzzled or challenged. By paying close attention to the nature of suffering, being present, considering if I continue to seek that which is subject to suffering, I will continue this cycle endlessly. And from that point, the intention rising, growing, just like a flower or like the lotus flower growing in the mud. And that intention never left the sight of suffering itself. It was that led him to take one step after the other without getting distracted, without stopping without deviating. Suffering itself, by being present, reminded him of his intention. And his intention was pointing at the opposite side of suffering, which was the end and the cessation of it. Not knowing what it was or how to do it, but still pointing, facing the north of his path. So the story of Siddhartha becoming a Buddha can help us also relate to our own lives. It's not to compare ourselves with the situations or conditions that Siddhartha and the Buddha went through, but we can learn from his journey. How can we relate our own suffering that we live every day, that we experience every day, that we encounter every day? If we take a moment to reflect and to consider whatever challenge, whatever difficulties, whatever pain we may be going through, by looking closely into it, we can see an intention arising within us. And that intention has the power to help us align ourselves, align our hearts towards the right direction. That's how we can come closer to these teachings, to comprehend a bit better the purpose of it, not to take it as a routine or to belong to a group or to follow rites or rituals, or just to simply take some aspects of the teaching, but to come closer and to have the experience ourselves to what it is to see this intention by paying close attention to our own suffering. And when we experience this, we approach the teaching, we approach the path, our own path, very differently. But once again, is an invitation for everyone to see or to walk in the footsteps that the Buddha took, one after the other. My humble suggestion or invitation is for everyone to reflect about yourselves, to look within, to find your own suffering, and to make the space and take the time just to look, just to observe. Do you still want to revolve in that suffering? Do you still want to seek that which is subject to more suffering? Or can you find, like the spark or even a beam of light called the intention, that wishes, that points at, that is setting the direction, willing to find the end of this suffering? A humble invitation for reflection, perhaps to open a door to this Dhamma, to your heart, to yourself from now on. And with this, we can finish our conversation today. I kindly invite everyone to pay homage to the Triple Gem, paying homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to pay homage to the Dhamma, the teachings which he well expounded, and paying homage to the Sangha, community of monastics that continue to practice well and share the Dhamma with the world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.